from an undisclosed location for reasons of security and insecurity. Tonight, it's the MNR TV Productions live TV show. And tonight, we're going to have special guest Leland Judson, who will be talking about fallen angels, DNA, and the ancient alien conspiracy. We've got a heck of a show. And this will not be possible without my co-host, the one and the only, the madman from Montreal, Mario. Welcome to the MNR TV live show. And tonight, we've got a great show full of information. Are you excited?
I'm always excited there, Robert, because this is the place we all want to be. We want to be after this big snowstorm of what, 40 centimeters.
Something like that. I didn't even count. Yeah, I feel like an igloo in here.
Of that wet, cold stuff. All you want is a nice hot coffee to get the wheels rolling.
Exactly.
Because that's all we want, is to get them wheels rolling, Robert.
And look at my cup, folks. The anti-Illuminati cup that I got done, Illuminati Resistance. We have our eye on you. That's us. And this has been brought to you by our sponsors, the Montreal Anti-Illuminati Task Force. And tonight we've got a great show with returning guests, Leland Judson, who's going to be talking so much about fallen angels, DNA, and the ancient alien conspiracy. And it's going to be great because he's been to the new Stonehenge in Canada, and he made a connection between the Aztecs and the Aztec. And he's going to talk about a new mystery called the Canadian Anubis Amulet, an ancient relic with paranormal powers. So that's going to be a heck of a show, and we can't wait for it to get on. And welcome back, viewers. We're glad to have you on. Welcome, Susie. It's good to see you, and whoever else may be listening. This is a worldwide transmission. So let's get ready and let's get rolling and let's get cracking.
All right. Here's Trish.
Growing up like beings gave Leland a coin from Mexico that encouraged him to start researching ancient history and pyramids. He became a polymath but also took a strong interest in researching aliens, UFOs, and any unexplained mysteries. He excelled in all sports but most of all the ancient Maya ball game. He helped organize and grow an underground ball game league in high school, and as a player he remained undefeated. Lineage: Leland is the grandchild of a Ukrainian mystic who escaped war-torn Europe to start a new family in Canada. He is also part Welsh and German. As a child he had regular contact with the Canadian Anubis Amulet. His religious background included Lutheran and Ukrainian Orthodox. He attended Roman Catholic and public schooling. By the age of 10 he began encountering the light beings that triggered a lifelong obsession with research and solving mysteries. Artist recreation of the light beings today. By the age of 33 Leland began traveling up north in Canada for any signs of ancient mysteries and light beings. There he encountered abandoned military bases plagued by UFO sightings, and exploration crews that had received counsel for traumatic Bigfoot encounters.
All right. Well, folks, yeah, we're back on the MNR TV live show, and we're about to get Leland Judson back on the Hangout.
Yeah, thank you there, Trish. What would we do without her, right? I mean, Trish is very important to this show, right there, Robert?
Yeah, I agree, exactly. She's like a third co-host, you know, and exactly. Hey, Leland, are you able to hear us? Is everything all right?
Hey guys, yeah, sorry about the little bit of a delay there. Just had a massive power outage on my street.
Oh,
okay. No. We understand. I mean, we're lucky we don't have one here. With this weather, we never.
Yeah, we did have a big winter storm yesterday, so I'm not really too sure why my power's cutting out today, but hopefully it'll stay on long enough to do the show tonight.
Exactly. Well, let's see. So let's get this hour of power on the road. So, what's new with you, Leland, since you last came on the show?
Yeah, I think the last time I was on the show was back in the summer, and a lot really has happened since then. I went to that Fan Expo convention and shared all my research about discovering King Solomon's gold mine. Got a lot of good reviews from people and got the word out to, I don't know, thousands and thousands of people. And some guys that look like Freemasons actually came up to my booth and talked to me about my work, and they actually congratulated me and told me to keep going. So it's like, I guess, I don't know if they were Freemasons for sure, but it was really something else.
It depends what level of Freemasons they were.
I don't know, a lot of people talk bad about Freemasons, and I had a lot of bad experiences, I guess, with them too. But I've had good experiences with some of them, so I can't really say all of them are bad. That's for sure.
Okay, no, I think it's the deeper level ones that are the bad, are the more dangerous ones.
Yeah, I guess they do go on different levels of Freemasonry. Like there's the beginner stuff.
Level. The bottom levels don't know anything much.
The 33.
Yeah, the 33rd degree Masons were the big ones, right?
Yeah, like Aleister Crowley.
Yeah. So yeah, other than that convention, there was a lot of other big stuff that happened too. Were you guys still able to hear me? So I just cut out there for a second.
Yes.
No,
loud and clear.
Hear you loud and clear. Mario, do you hear me?
Okay, great.
Loud and
you're
clear.
back now. Yeah, so a lot of incredible stuff has happened, and that discovery that I made up north just keeps exploding. So I brought some extra slides to share with you guys to tell you about some of the new research that's developed since we talked last. And it's really got some biblical implications and end times implications, fallen angels, conspiracies. And it's pretty wild stuff. So maybe we should get started with the slides right away.
Yeah, let's get
All
going.
right. Let's
sorry
do
if I'm just
deals.
I'm just out of breath here a little bit because I had to run up and down a flight of stairs like 10 times in order to reboot my modem over and over again.
Oh boy, yeah. Now you know how this is very stressful.
I think I got everything. Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm all set to go now. Everything that went down from the power is all back now, so should be good to go. And Mario, did you want to put up the first slide, or you got it on there already?
It's on already.
Okay, yeah. The first slide is a picture of my family. That's actually me there. If anyone is wondering, I actually did have hair at one point.
yeah, exactly. I saw a picture. I go, who's that? Is that Leland?
Yeah, so this is my family at my aunt's place, and the lady that's holding me is actually my grandma, and she was she was a mystic from Ukraine, and her and my grandpa were actually in what is it called, those camps where people are sentenced to death around World War II.
Concentration camps.
Yeah, I don't know if it was actually a concentration camp, but something along that lines. Anyway, so my grandpa managed to escape, and he was allowed to take one person with him back to Canada when he escaped. And so he was able to bring my grandma, they got married. And then I think this is where a lot of my paranormal stuff can trace back to, because like you can look at my grandma here in this picture, and doesn't even she kind of look like she's a mystic? Like just a look on her face, it's like she's a little bit different than regular people, right?
Yeah.
I know she's a really private person too, so like I know like she's passed on now. I just apologize for showing her picture here, but I think it's a big part of the story, so I figured I should show people how it all began, right?
Exactly. The origin.
So if you want to go into yeah, and if you want to go into the next slide, it's got a picture of the light beams. Yeah, so about actually that picture was taken just before my grandma died. She had an accident, she fell, she went into a coma, and she never recovered out of the coma. But then shortly after that, I ended up running into outside in an encounter with light beings. And we talked about it the first time I was on the show. So if anyone wants to go back into the archive and check that stuff out and hear more about what happened with that, I guess we can't really spend too much time on it because we got a lot of new stuff to cover.
Yeah, exactly. So let's, yeah, for sure.
The next.
Yeah, so yeah, the next slide then is these light beings gave me a coin. And the coin wasn't like super old or anything, but it's what is it here? A coin from Mexico. Okay. And then when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about Mexico. So I was looking at these pictures and I'm like, oh, it looks like sort of ancient stuff. So I'm going to start researching ancient stuff. And hopefully one day I could find out why the light beings gave me this coin, right?
They gave it to you.
Yeah. Well, how it worked was the light beings came up to me. And then the next day when I went back to the place we had an encounter with them, this coin was laying right in the spot. So I was like, man, this coin, like you don't find too many coins from Mexico back in the early 80s in Canada, that's for sure.
No.
It's like this is the first time I've ever seen Mexican currency in my whole life, and I really haven't even seen any since because I don't travel a lot.
Very interesting.
So if you want to zoom in a little bit actually on that, Mario, can you zoom in on that to the coin with the bird?
No, I can't really do that.
Okay. Well, I guess it's pretty big anyway.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, we see it. Yeah. Let's go to it again. I won't talk.
Okay, so the coin with the bird on it is actually a really popular occult symbol for the sacred tree. And the sacred tree is something I started researching a lot with my work with adept initiates. So I was lucky when I started this writing job, I actually started to uncover the mysteries of what this coin was. And if you wanted to go on to the next slide, you can see here that on the next slide, we've got a whole bunch of the different sacred trees. And it's actually cultures from all over the world that had the same sacred tree. And people look at them at first glance and like, oh, these things look so different. There's no way any of them could be connected, right? But the main symbol that you can tell that connects them is if you want to zoom in on the top a little bit, Mario, you can see that on each of these sacred trees, there's a bird, then there's a serpent, and usually the winged disc. And this is the connection for the ancient universal internet, I believe, like the Akashic records. I think you guys have talked about that on the show before, right?
We talked about the internet.
Yeah, that was I think maybe my first or second time I was on the show. Right?
I think second.
So I guess we'll go on to the So a big part of those sacred trees is we got two different poles or temples that match the ones from the Freemasons use. If you want to go on to the next slide, Mario, you can see the mountain that I climbed up north.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, and this mountain is actually in the shape of King Solomon's temple just because it's split right up the middle, like sort of like two pillars. If you want to zoom into the center of that mountain, you can see that there's a giant crack or a split right up the middle. I don't know if you're able to zoom in on this picture at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to see without it, but if you zoom in, yeah, you can see that it's definitely a symbol of King Solomon's temple. So when I was exploring up north, this is one of the main symbols that clued me in. I was like, yeah, I'm on to something big here. And if you want to go to the next slide.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, this is my campsite on the top of the mountain. And I actually got some help from the people that lived in the nearby town. Actually, one of my friends works in the mine there. So he helped me get up to the top of the mountain, and I started exploring. I was going to explore to see if I could find any clues to basically solve this coin that I got from the light beings. So if you want to go into the next slide, this just is a quick review of the King Solomon's discovery I made. I found this offering table on the top of the mountain, and it matched one that looked just like a sacred spot in ancient, not ancient, but current Bulgaria. So what I found out is that there was a huge gold empire run by the Thracians, and the Phoenicians, basically an ancient European culture that was shipping gold from North America all the way back to the Holy Land. And it was a pretty big discovery. A lot of people weren't sure if it was true or not, but when I went to the convention, I'd say a good 80% of the people that I talked to agreed that I was onto something big.
Oh,
I even talked to a lot of experts there too.
Go ahead.
All right, if you want to go on to the next slide, I got some help from one of my Freemason friends. She suggested that I take the discovery I made up north and compare it to some Egyptian stuff to see if I could find a match. And I don't know if you're on that's the slide. It's called the Ancient Magi Offering Tables. So what I did is I took the picture of the Egyptian style and compared it to one in Canada, and it was almost an identical copy, like it could fit right inside of it. And I was looking on the offering table itself to see what it was. And if you want to go on to the next slide, it's actually, there's a museum called the Louvre. I think that's is that in France or something?
Paris.
Yeah, so that's where they keep the offering table that they got from Egypt. And it has some information on what it means. I don't know if you could maybe read that part for me, Robert. I just got to grab a drink quick.
Okay.
It says offering tables were used for sculpted stones.
I can't see it.
Trying to focus.
Never mind. There we go. I just got a drink quick. Sorry about that.
It keeps flickering on and off.
Okay. Well, what I'll do is I'll read it now. So basically, the offering table was used as a false door, or basically a Stargate. I was like, wow, this is like the ancient stuff we hear in science fiction and stuff, eh? That the ancients used Stargates. And it was from the cult.
Now.
Yeah.
To see.
Yeah, so it's some pretty wild theory that it was used as a Stargate. So it's like, I don't know for sure at this point what I was getting into. And then here, what does it say too? Yeah, it was involved with the cult of the dead. Block of stone. Yeah, so I guess we'll go on to the next slide. So this is some of my new research. What slide number are we at? 10?
10.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we skipped the YouTube video, but we'll run it after this slide, I guess. So what I found out is that those offering tables, when they're filled with water, they make a liquid surface, and this liquid surface is able to reflect starlight. And then it shows in ancient Egypt how, what is it, Thoth was standing next to a giant mirror, and these ancient Sumerian guys or Assyrian guys also used mirrors as stargates. So here we have this like theory that a lot of people are going on that aliens got here in spaceships, but it doesn't seem to match with the evidence that I'm finding.
And who
it's weird too. It's like
the fallen.
Yeah, a lot of people say that this guy here in the mirror, what is it, the one on the far right, is he's one of the ancient Sumerian gods. I don't know if he would be Enki, or I'll have to check more into that. But see what he's holding in his hands? Yeah, the Anunnaki. Do you see what he's holding in his hands, though, the guy standing in the mirror? Looks like plants. I don't know if you can zoom in on what he's holding in his hand.
Wow.
So basically what I was thinking here is like, man, this guy that's passing through the mirror is showing in his hands how this technology is working, and it's a shamanic plant. I don't know if you guys have heard of the different shamanic plants like mushrooms or ayahuasca. It's pretty popular these days too, right?
I've heard of that, yes.
Yeah, and so I think what he's holding there is opium or maybe some other type of shamanic plant. And then where it connects to what I found up north too is a really surprising connection, is that there were shamanic mushrooms growing right next to the Canadian offering table. So I was like, man, if shamans were really using this as a stargate, here's more evidence. The mushrooms or shamanic plants are right next to it. So you could literally just pick it and then look into it, right?
You're going deep into this stuff. Hopefully your life's is not going to be in danger.
No, I'm not into that doing psychedelics anymore. Like when I was a younger and teenager and stuff, I experimented with that magic mushrooms and that kind of thing. But that's been 20 years ago now since I've done anything like that. So I'm not going to start doing it again.
No.
I found that there's other ways to achieve the shamanic state too. Like you can use fasting, you can use other types of different methods. You don't have to use shamanic plants. But Mario, if you wanted to play the video I got next.
Oh, definitely. All right.
It's a YouTube video I made, and basically what happened was I'm not a real mushroom expert, so I didn't know which mushrooms are which. So I had to take a video next to the offering table of all the mushrooms I could find and then show it to people online so I could get some help to identify it, right?
Let's play the video.
All right,
yeah,
let's do
so this is the video. Yeah, you can leave the sound on if you want to. My friend Jake made the music for it. His band's called, I guess his music or band is called Deadbeat Blast. Yeah, and the really wild part too, I guess I'll talk still while the video is going, is that these mushrooms grow at a specific time, and to use the offering table, you also have to use it at a specific time. And the time that you use it is when you can view the star Sirius the best. And that happens to be in the dog days of summer, like it says there in the video. So it's like, isn't it a wild coincidence that these magic mushrooms bloom also in the dog days of summer? And it's only a short period that they bloom. So it's like, is it coincidence that these mushrooms only bloom at the exact time that you need to use them for the table? Yeah, how far did you guys get on the video? Is it finished playing or?
No,
Do we go to the next slide or?
Yeah, after the mushroom video is done, you can go to the next slide.
Let it play.
Well, it's done already. Do you want me to play it again?
No,
just once is good.
Okay.
And it's funny too. I don't know if you guys recognize those type of mushrooms at all or no.
No, wait, it's not up yet.
Oh, you want me to play the video again?
No, I was just thinking like just a follow-up question for the video. It's like, have you guys ever heard of the Christmas mushroom before? It's sort of like a red mushroom with white specks.
But I never did any of this stuff, so I wouldn't really know.
No, it's not a good thing to get into. It's like, I hung out with a really rough crowd when I was a kid, and a lot of people that I hung out with, even some of my best friends, have already passed on now. And I'm not really that old, so it's like, if you live that type of lifestyle, you pay the price in a lot of cases, right?
Okay, no.
Sad but true.
Okay, no.
So I definitely don't recommend it.
Mm.
But yeah, if we want to go into the next slide here, I did some research on how fiber optic networks work with computers. And then I found out that networking cables have two different functions. You can have one that's just a regular cable, or you can have a crossover cable which mirrors the signal. So it's like if you plug a regular network cable into a computer that's set up to work on a crossover cable, it won't even detect the signal. It'll just be like, it doesn't work at all, right? Right. So it's like, what happens if these ancients that were stargazing to reach the Akashic records couldn't just look at a star normally? They had to reflect the signal in order for it to become a usable signal for a computer. And it just so happens that the human body is the computer that can process the signal.
The human brain.
Through meditation. Yep. It's like, you guys have probably seen it a million times on different occult websites, is they have the third eye.
Yes, I've researched the third eye, the pineal gland.
Yeah, it's one of the key components in using your body in meditation states in order to connect to this universal internet. So basically the slide I made here next to the mirror is Orion's belt has 3 stars that point to Sirius. And the Egyptian pyramids are also in the same shape pointing to Sirius. And the pyramids in South America make up an also matching sign of Orion's belt. So it's like, man, we're getting right into the point where it's like every culture around the world that was building pyramids was also connecting to this Akashic records or universal internet source of information. I think it even helped them build the pyramids, to be honest.
I think it's ancient technology, ancient alien technology, the pyramids, for sure.
Now they talk about in different. I'm just getting a little bit of a lag there. All right, if you wanted to go on to the next slide. Basically, one of the blogs I was doing is I discovered that Orion's belt in Freemason literature, if you want to zoom in into the middle image, it's got an ancient pagan guy to match the symbol of the 3 stars. And the way he was holding his arms up are the symbol for the internet connection. So I was like, man, this is pretty wild that even the pagans in England and stuff, like, have you guys ever heard of this long man in England before? It's basically a huge image of a guy standing holding 2 poles. It's from like the Druid age. So then I started looking. Yeah, even a lot of Europeans or even pagans I've spoke to haven't heard of this stuff before. So it's like some pretty ancient stuff that's like the bowl at the very bottom beneath the pagan symbol. It's if you type in witches, what is it called? Witches equipment, sort of like different magic tools that witches use. This bowl on the bottom left is the holy grail for witches. It's like if you go into their website and want to buy a copy of this bowl, even a replica of it's going to cost you hundreds of dollars. You can't just spend like $5 and buy a copy of it.
No, very expensive.
Yeah, so it's a really important symbol, and I noticed that in the very top left image, you got a guy that's sitting in a meditative state. He's holding onto a snake, and in his left hand, or I guess it would be his right hand, he's holding a ring. And that ring turns out to be a metal torque. And if you put it around your neck, it allows your body to transform into the light body. And then that light body state is how you pass through the mirrors. So it's like if you want to use a mirror as a Stargate, you can't just walk through it. You're going to have to transform your body into pure energy or light before you're able to do so.
Do you think it's still done today?
I think in the ancient times, this sort of stuff was really popular, and they talk about a veil, like the ages changed. So when the ages changed, I believe a lot of this stuff became hidden. Sort of like they said a veil was put all over everything, and that one day it would be lifted. And I think now we're in the age, it just passed, and everything's been lifted. So people are starting to figure this stuff out. It's like I'm not the only one who's catching on to this. I think other people are going to start catching on to how to use the ancient internet.
Interesting.
And if you could use that, if you want to use that same slide and zoom in on just the middle guy and the Egyptian guy, I don't know if you can do that. This Egyptian guy is holding on to the same serpent ropes or ancient internet connection. And I was like, man, look at the Egyptian guy's leg, how he's sitting in the chair. And then look at the guy next to him. His leg is almost in the exact same position, right?
Like a perfect fit.
Like the way, yeah, like his knee is bent in the same position. I don't know how many times anyone's tried sitting in chairs different ways, but I don't think sitting like that would be very comfortable for too long.
No.
So it's almost like he was doing it on purpose to show that he was matching the symbol of Orion's belt.
A lot of mystery out there.
Yeah, and the biggest part of this too is we've got a huge connection here between the ancient Europeans and the Egyptians. And it's like I always heard that the Egyptians were pretty much like just Middle Eastern people or black people or different races, but it's not really too often that I heard that there was a chance that there was Europeans there as well, right?
Well, I've heard that the pharaohs were ancient alien hybrids.
Yeah, that could be.
That's what my research says. I don't know.
No, it's definitely some pretty wild stuff. But I guess, yeah, we should probably go on to the next slide. I don't want to spend too much time on that one. So basically what I did is when I found this ancient offering table was used for the universal internet, I compared it to Sumerian pictures, and they even show the Anunnaki carrying a water bag. I was like, man, if they had to refill this pool, they're going to have to carry a water bag roughly the same size as they're showing in the pictures, because they hold quite a bit of water. So basically what I did is I went on a camping trip and I split up from the group in the middle of the night, didn't tell anyone, and I went and tried out the offering table by myself to see if I could get it to work.
And what happened?
See if I could. It was funny because it's like you go onto the internet, you know what usually happens is you boot up Google or Firefox or what is it? What was the old one? Internet Explorer. So I was like, heck, if I'm going to be using the ancient internet, what is the internet browser going to be? Like, what can I expect? It's like there's not going to be some Google symbol opening or something when I'm trying to meditate, right? So I got a little bit frustrated when I was doing it, and I was like, I'm not really sure if I'm connecting. I'm not sure if anything's really happening. But then when I went to bed that same night after giving up and I started dreaming, my dreams drastically changed, and they started giving me new messages and new things that I should research. And then after I woke up, I was like, man, what happens if the browser can affect your dreams? It's like you're not going to be able to use Chrome, but your dreams might work, right?
That's possible, yes. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and if you want to go on to the next slide, this is basically how I figured out that King Solomon's gold mine was being used in this location. If you want to zoom up to the spot where number 1 is on the map, that's where the offering table is. And then just down the road, or no, number 2 is the offering table, and number 1 is the gold mine. And this gold mine is massive. It's like the number 2 best quality gold in the whole world. And that red line that goes down from number 1 and 2 is traced over the Ottawa River. So the Ottawa River goes the whole way there. So these ancient guys didn't have to walk the gold anywhere. They were able to take boats the whole way. And boats were the only shipping method back then, really, right?
Yeah.
And there's Montreal.
Yeah, and it's really wild. We talked, I think, what was it the last time I was on the show? One of the shipping ports along the way was named after Noah's grandson there in Montreal, and it was called Magog.
Magog.
So then I researched, and then we found out that Magog is actually the Freemasons' headquarters, and it's actually their largest headquarters for an outdoor facility. So it's like, isn't it a surprise where they're loading up the gold just so happened to be the Freemasons' main place of operation. And if you go to the map on the right side, you can see that the Mediterranean Sea also connects to the ocean. So this is where these ancient Phoenicians were bringing the gold in. And then I checked the different islands like Malta. It had a whole bunch of the Phoenician relics there. And then the whole area in this Mediterranean, I guess a lot of people don't study geography, so they might not know. But Turkey, Syria, Jerusalem, Egypt, and Bulgaria are all along the Mediterranean Sea. So if you're a Phoenician trading culture, you're basically going to be trading with all of these places a lot, right?
That's right.
And then too, if you look at Lebanon, in their empire stretched from there, their actual, the capital city was called Sidon, and it's also another name of Noah's grandkids. So anyways, if you go from Lebanon to their farthest port was in Portugal, that was something like 2,200 kilometers. And then I measured the distance from Portugal to Newfoundland, and guess how much it came up to?
How much?
100 kilometers less. So I was like, if these guys were already taking boats across their empire, then they should have been able to make the journey across the ocean, because it's actually less. Because like this Mediterranean Sea would have been covered in pirates, I bet too. Even today, I think I've heard rumors of pirates still going around, right? So it's like if you went across the ocean, it might even be an easier journey because you wouldn't have to deal with the pirates either. And the Mediterranean's not a straight route. Like you'd have to go and make a lot of turns before you got to Portugal. But if you go across the ocean, catch the current to an island called the Azores, and then that cuts the journey in half too. So you didn't even have to go the whole distance on water. You could stop halfway, have refuel your supplies, and then continue on to Newfoundland. So I don't know, a lot of people argued with me and said there's no way the Phoenicians could travel that far by boat, but I've pretty much found the evidence to the contrary here. And if you want to go on, yeah, if you want to go into the next slide too, it's funny that in South America, when this, well, I guess it's not funny, it's a tragedy. When the Spanish arrived in South America, they were welcomed as visitors because they looked just like the Phoenicians. They had the same beards, their hats were almost the same. They had the lighter colored skin. So it's like a lot of people are wondering why the Spanish were mistaken for the return of someone ancient. Well, here we can see who the ancient people were that they were mistaken for. And then the ship on the left too shows that the Phoenicians actually had some pretty massive ships. Right? It's not like they had to take a rowboat to get across. And even so, it's like there was a guy that set a record for taking a paddleboard across the ocean. So it's like, I'm pretty sure if someone could take a paddleboard across, a guy with a huge ship could do it too, right?
I could imagine, yeah.
And then a lot of people don't know anything about the Phoenicians. Like, heck, 10 years ago, I didn't know anything about them either. But a lot of the information, like I was saying, that veil is being lifted. So if you want to go into the next slide, I'll tell you a little bit about who the Phoenicians were. So basically, the Phoenicians were an ancient European people that actually used caskets, mummies, sphinxes, the whole deal. Pretty much like everything you can imagine Egyptian, they also did. And I don't know if anyone's heard of that kind of stuff before, like an Egyptian culture that also is the same as Europeans. It's like, that's really odd, and from what I normally heard, right?
That is very strange. We don't hear that too often.
No. So then I checked to see what the religious symbol of these Phoenicians was. And if you want to go on to the next slide, they carried the winged disc. And that winged disc is the symbol that I was using for connecting to the ancient internet on that offering table. And lo and behold, there's still a religion today called the Zoroastrians. And they have the exact same guy. And they call him Ahura Mazda. So I'm like, heck, I'm going to type in Ahura Mazda to see what I can learn. And what do you know? It turns out that Ahura Mazda is also the secret meaning to Freemasons. So I was like, wow, isn't that another coincidence? Huh?
Ancient religions.
Yeah. And did you guys see who wrote this book? Like, if you can zoom in on the green book there, it says who the author is.
Pike.
Yeah. So, yeah, Albert Pike. And you guys have heard of him a bit.
Of course, yes.
He's the guy who talked about the World War III prediction and all that stuff came from Albert Pike.
Protocols of Elders.
So basically, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with Albert Pike. And I talked to a bunch of people about it, and a lot of people argued with me and said that Albert Pike really wasn't a high-rank Freemason at all, and he doesn't even know what he's talking about and stuff. So I checked to see what I could find out on Albert Pike, and it turns out he has a tomb, and that tomb is located in the very heart of Washington, D.C.'s pentagram layout. You know that giant pentagram in D.C.?
The obelisk?
Mm-hmm.
The obelisk.
Well, it's basically like you draw an outline on top of the city outline of what DC is designed like. And then that makes a pentagram.
Oh, yeah.
Well, anyways, that's where, so that's where Albert Pike's tomb is. So I'm like, if Albert Pike really wasn't their main leader or highest ranked, why did they put him in a tomb in the most sacred place to all Freemasons? So I really don't believe that the people that are arguing with me have any weight in their argument. It's like, unless they move Albert Pike's tomb, I don't think they can really say that he is a high-ranked member, or was a high-ranked member. Yeah, and then it's a weird thing too is I bought this book, and guess what it says inside is that Albert Pike is basically writing, saying that this ancient winged disc religion is the history of the Aryans. I don't know if you've heard of the Aryan stuff from like the Nazis and stuff we're going into.
Yeah, and the secret UFO projects that are trying to extraterrestrials.
So, like, what happened was, I looked up Albert Pike's reputation. A lot of people were calling him a KKK member, right? So I was like, what evidence is there that he was a KKK member? I couldn't find any. But then that's when I read this book and I found out that he was researching the Aryan race a lot. So I was like, hey, maybe if he's researching the Aryan race, that's where he picked up the KKK association with, right?
That's possible, yes.
Sort of like today, a lot of Trump supporters are getting called racist right away too, right? Just the term gets thrown around pretty easily nowadays. But yeah, so this is where the term forbidden archaeology comes in. It's like I always wondered what was so forbidden about it. Well, the Freemasons probably aren't going to want to tell a lot of people that they're researching ancient Aryan history, right? That's probably where a lot of the secrecy comes in too. Yeah, so if you want to go on to the next slide, like a lot of people were arguing with Pike and the Nazis saying that they weren't Europeans, and it was actually Middle Eastern people. But you can see this article from Fox News was just published in May of 2016. So it's not even a year old yet, some of this information. And they did the DNA test, and lo and behold, it proved that they were ancient Europeans, just like Pike and Hitler were saying. And it's like a lot of people are going to look at this information and try to say that, oh, this is like Nazi propaganda, that's like a gold mine for them, right? But if you want to go on to the next slide, I don't think the Nazis and Albert Pike were that accurate after all. It's like if you go to the next slide, I found out that a picture of Noah and what is it, the Dead Sea Scrolls. You guys have heard of those, right?
Yes, we got, yeah. We sure have.
Yeah, so the Dead Sea Scrolls have a description of Noah as not being blonde hair and Aryan like we heard Hitler say, but it turns out that he was actually an albino, and a special type of albino that was apparently the same as the Anunnaki. So like here we have an idea now of the Anunnaki DNA. If we're trying to compare it, it was really close to an albino. So it's like, I don't think the Nazis and all these people are going to say the Aryans are superior, because apparently the Anunnaki don't have any skin pigment. So it's like maybe they're a race that we haven't even seen before, right? But one that's closely related to the Europeans, because we'll get on to next, like what Noah's kids look like.
Next slide.
I want to go on to the next slide.
Okay.
Next.
Yeah. Yeah, this next slide gives a breakdown of what happened when, well, basically all of Noah's kids. And that Magog place that I found in Montreal there is on this list. And lo and behold, all these descendants are the red-haired European people. And if you check, where is it? Underneath, it goes Noah, Ham, Cush, Nimrod. And Nimrod, you've heard of him, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
he was
definitely.
Yeah, he's the guy we always talk about when it's the Tower of Babel, right?
The Tower of Babel, yeah.
Yeah, so here we have, what I did is I put a red block around all the ancestors of Noah that started to return to the ancient pagan ways, and they got targeted for doing so. Like Nimrod, he went back to the old ways, and that's why he's in red, because the Tower of Babel was destroyed. Magog, when he was in North America, or his ancestors, they were doing cannibalism and stuff and eating babies to prolong their lives. So they got wiped out for that too. There's legends from the First Nations people that they actually trapped them all in a cave and killed them for it.
It's horrible.
And then if you look at, yeah, it's some pretty wild history. And it's amazing how many of the other cultures all support it. It's like, I don't know how this has been covered up so long, but it's like the veil is lifted now. We're finding out some of the biggest clues ever. It's like, if you look at...
There's a question for you. Where did Leland find information that Noah was an albino? The Book of Enoch?
Yeah, it's the Book of Enoch. Sorry if I got sidetracked there.
It's okay. No, I just had a question. One of my viewers.
Go ahead. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the questions. Go right ahead if you got more. And then underneath you got Noah, Ham, and then Canaan, the Hittites, and the Sidon Empire. It's like Sidon was the capital of the Phoenicians. So we have here the proof that Noah's descendants actually built Sidon and became the Phoenicians. And you guys have heard much about the Hittites in the Bible before, or no?
I haven't. Have you, Mario?
Yeah, weren't they giants or no?
Yeah, they were actually associated with the giants, and they were close to the same people that, what is it, David and Goliath. So Goliath was close to the Hittites. If you want to go on to the next slide, this actually covers that. So the reason we haven't heard much about these, the Hittites and the Canaanites, is we get an example of what happened to them. Did you want to read this one, Robert? Or?
Yeah, I can't read it.
Oh, you can't? Oh, it's all right. I can get it. It's you shall not leave alive. Oh, okay. Yeah, it says here in Deuteronomy verse 20:17 that you shall not leave alive anything that breathes. Utterly destroy them. The Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, as your Lord God has commanded you, so that they may not teach you. And it's like, what is that?
Nephilim.
Yeah, so like this Amorite people, they were the ones that became the, what is it that Goliath was? The Philistines, I believe, something like that.
Yeah.
So basically this verse is telling us that David and Goliath, like I know if you type David and Goliath into Google right now and you see the pictures, they always picture Goliath as a person with darker skin and darker hair. But this research is showing that he was actually the one with lighter skin and red hair. So it's almost like history got reversed at one point. So it's like, what happened is like, this is where at the end it says they won't, God is going to prevent the Hittites from teaching you. It's like, well, what could the Hittites teach us that was so dangerous to the Bible, right?
Right.
So if you want to go on to the next slide, I don't know, this is sort of like the Matrix, if you guys really want to know what they taught. The blue pill or the red pill.
The Matrix.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll dive into it. We can't go this far and turn back, right? So anyways, you got the Hittite slide up there now?
Yep.
So here we have it. It turns out the Hittites, hardly anyone knew anything about them because they got completely wiped out. And we know why, because it says in the Bible who wiped them out. But if you zoom in on the picture, like on underneath, basically it looks like two sphinxes.
Mm-hmm.
So we can see here that these ancient Hittites were basically following Egyptian stuff too.
Well, Leland, hold on a second.
Sure.
The next picture is the Phoenician tablet.
Oh, okay. Maybe skip
That was the
that
next
one.
picture.
Try skipping that one then.
Okay.
Maybe I got an extra one in there.
Yeah.
Ah, there it is.
Okay.
Oh, okay, now we're on track.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just repeat that then. If you want to zoom into the picture where it's got the two sphinxes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we can see here that the ancient Hittites, why they were wiped out is because they were following the ancient pagan gods still. And here's the real kicker too, is look at the language that the Hittites were using. It says here, not only could they speak European languages, but they could also translate the old cuneiform. So people are always talking like, they said that, what is it? The Bible stories often match the ancient Sumerian texts. But people are always like, what's the connection between the Bible and the Sumerians? We never had the missing link, right? So now we have the missing link. It's like these Hittite guys, the reason the Bible didn't want them to teach us is because they could teach us what was translated. They could read the before Bible and the after Bible, tell us what was changed and what was added. So this is why the Bible didn't want the Hittites to teach people. It was basically going to blow wide open the cover up. And then some people are arguing with me too, saying that the Hittites really aren't the pagans from the Bible or whatever, and saying that these ancient Europeans aren't really them. Well, if you want to go on to the next slide, I found some more evidence. I'll just make sure it's the right one too. Is it a golden calf?
Slide.
Yeah, next slide.
Okay.
The royal tomb of Ur.
Yeah, that's the one. So you can see that this cuneiform language is next to a culture that was making the golden idols. So it's like, I'm pretty sure you guys heard that the ancient pagans, the bad guys in the Bible, were worshiping golden idols.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I remember like I went to Catholic school and I was actually an altar boy for a long time too. Luckily, none of the bad stuff was happening back then that I knew of anyways. But I got a chance to ask the priest, like, who were these pagans that were getting wiped out? And when they were teaching the whole class, they would never tell us. They'd always be like, oh, we don't know who these ancient pagans were, but whoever they were really bad, right? So it's like, now we know who they were. They were the ancient Europeans. It's like, I guess they probably didn't tell us that because we wouldn't be in so favor of wiping them out then, right? I don't know. It's pretty wild stuff. And like I was telling you before, how the Zoroastrians have that winged disc religion. If you want to go on to the next slide. This religion is still going today, and they worship with fire. So it's like they got the winged disc, the golden idol, and they worship with fire. I'm pretty sure fire worship came up as a bad thing in the Bible too, right?
It did, yes.
Yeah, and then what's on the side of this fire temple is they got the two pillars, just like the pillars from King Solomon's temple, right?
Yeah.
So you can see why the Freemasons are so big into Ahura Mazda, is because he was the one, or this ancient pagan god is the one that originated these two towers from, long before the Bible was ever written. Yeah, it's pretty wild too if you guys want to go into the next slide, because we've got the language connection too. It's like if the DNA isn't enough, here's some of the language connections. It's like all the languages in the world, well, not all of them, but quite a few of them can trace back to Canaanites and the Phoenicians. So it's like if it was true that Noah's descendant was Canaan, then a lot of languages would trace back to him. Here's the evidence that it does. Oh, but there's a couple things on this language map that actually didn't check out almost with my research. You see the part at the end where it's got Arabic turning into Persian?
Oh, yes, yes.
Well, it turns out that Arabs and Persian people are in like a really bitter war. And it's like they're always arguing and fighting about who created who first. And
They don't
it's
like each
no, it's basically they had to share the same land and their cultures weren't the same. And the cultures didn't blend together and make some paradise of like equality, but one wiped out the other. So, well, nearly wiped out. The Zoroastrians make up a very small portion of what's left in Iran. It's like, I don't know if you guys have heard of that before, that's what Albert Pike and all these guys found out, is that ancient Iran used to be the home of the Aryans. So all the people that are living there now are recent immigrants. Well, not recent, I guess like 1,000 years or whatever, but still it's like the Phoenicians and the Aryans and all those guys used to live there. And that's why all these wars are going on with Iran. You guys have heard about the new push for war with Iran?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. These Persian and Zoroastrian guys are some of the richest people in the world. Like they've got so many billions that it makes Bill Gates look like small potatoes. And they're trying to wipe out, Saudi Arabia. So it's like we got this war going on still today where these people from Iran that are the ancient Europeans want their homeland back. And they want all the people that are Arab and living in Iran out. So this is where we got this huge war going on the world stage right now. And everyone's not even sure what it's about. They're like, oh, it could be about oil, or it could be about this, or it could be about that, right? They don't know the ancient history of it. It's like, have you guys seen the movie 300 before?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that has a lot of the wars between the Persians, and they depicted them as not being European. So a lot of the people that are Persian living in Iran right now are real pissed about that. They're like, why did you guys make a movie and then change the race, right? It's like we always hear that about Hollywood whitewashing different characters. Like the Last Samurai was played by Tom Cruise or whatever, right? So basically we had some reverse of that going on, where the ancient Persians were depicted as not European. So I don't know. It's like that's basically where a lot of the wars we're facing on the world stage, like the biblical end times are talking about. It's basically the war between the ancient Persians, the Arabs, and the Jews got involved with it too, because the Jews lived in Iran as well.
And the coming one world emperor, the Antichrist.
Yeah, I was talking about that in one of my episodes. I think that was the last show I was on, right?
Yeah, you were talking about that.
Yeah, I was worried that a lot of the research I was coming across was going to paint me out to be the Antichrist, but actually the latest discovery I made kind of disproves that, so it was a little bit of a relief, actually.
Because I don't think you want
to be
Christ.
No, I definitely didn't want to be the Antichrist. That'd be like the worst news ever.
Because you
but anyways,
my last show, yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, I was like, man, if this is even true at all, how come the Irish people or the Celtic people in Europe don't tell people that they're related to Noah, right? It's like, and then I checked, and it turns out that their history actually does say that. If you want to go on to the next slide, it's called the early history of the Gaels. I don't know if you got that one up there yet.
The next slide. Okay.
Yeah. It's called the early history of the Gaels. Yeah, there it is. So basically, what happened in Europe is a lot of the Celtic people there forgot their own history. But if you look it up, it's still recorded. And you can find out that they wrote it all down, saying that they were related to Noah, that Magog was one of their ancestors. And it even has the whole Tower of Babel part, where it talks about how Nimrod was actually an ancient European. So it's like, it's funny how all this stuff got forgotten for so long, but now the veil's been lifted, right? And it's wild too. It's like it even mentions how when the Tower of Babel fell, that we had a choice between 72 languages. So it's almost like the holographic universe theory is saying that like there's different codes that make up the universe. And I guess in our program that made our universe, they gave us 72 languages that can basically be made on the planet. So it's like, it's hilarious how much advanced knowledge is left in these ancient texts, and we're just starting to understand it now.
Because we have the knowledge to understand the ancient knowledge.
Yeah, and then the last paragraph on this page of the history of the Gaels is when they were living in Iran and they were living in Sidon and in Syria and Damascus, and they had a huge gold empire going from North America. It made them a target because people wanted to steal all the gold. So after they got killed off and the gold stole, they all had to escape. And they did a wandering story similar to Israel. You know how the tribes of Israel all had to wander to try to get to the new land? So that's basically how all the Gaels and Europeans ended up way up north. It was the only way they could escape and not have anyone continue to wipe them out was to get as far away as possible. And that's how they all ended up north. More basically in today's Europe, right?
Yeah. Just very interesting.
Yeah. And then people are going to argue with me a little bit still too that these ancient Europeans aren't connected to the ancient Anunnaki. So I made a next slide if you want to go to it. Mm-hmm. The ancient pagan symbols were those feathered, or those what is it called, the serpents of knowledge for the fiber optic internet. They started off with the wife of Anu. And I guess I should explain before I continue is, do you guys know what the word Anunnaki translates to?
No.
It's actually, a lot of people make fun of it on the internet, but what they don't know is that it's actually, Anu is one of the gods of Sumeria, like the top of the chain sort of thing.
And Enki.
And then Ki is the word for earth. So basically what Anunnaki translates to is those that came from the ancient god to earth, like a descendant of him. So then if you follow the timeline, and it's funny too, do you see the plant or the serpents that the first symbol is holding? I was like, man, it doesn't seem like it connects because it doesn't look like a serpent, but it turned out it's a lotus, and it's a blue, or the lotus has shamanic properties. He's holding is saying, hey, you have to use shaman methods to connect to the ancient internet. And then you follow the same tradition of the ancient serpents, and it goes from the Anunnaki to the Sumerians, to the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, then to the different pagans in Denmark, Siberia, England, and then the pharaohs. So I was like, holy, maybe this does prove that there was some European pharaohs at one point. And then it's funny too, like there was a DNA study that came out that said a lot of people in Europe are related to, I forget which pharaoh, maybe King Tut it was. I was like, how the heck is that even possible, right? So it's like now we're seeing why it's possible.
That's very strange.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you want to go on to the next slide, I'll just summarize a little bit too. Here's where I got the evidence for the ancient Magog people. And it says in Europe, they were also into cannibalism. So I was like, isn't that funny that the natives are pretty terrible, I guess, that the natives said that the Magog tribe were cannibals. And if you ask the people in Europe, they also said that the Magogs were cannibals. So I was like, how is that even possible unless it's true? Right?
That's right. But it seems like it's a worldwide phenomenon, those cannibalism going on everywhere.
Yeah. All right, so I guess the next thing we'll get on to is the Anubis amulet. It's a pretty wild story. It's like my aunt, like after I found all this information out, I was like, oh, thank God, I've discovered what I needed to do. Maybe my job for the light beings is complete. But my aunt called me up and she's like, hey, you're researching some ancient artifacts and stuff. I want you to take a look at something. And it turned out our family had recovered an ancient relic. I think, what was it, almost 50 years ago in the ruins of an ancient house. Yeah, I guess if you want to go to the next slide.
Okay.
So this house that you see here is where the Anubis amulet was found. And it's basically an ancient artifact that looks like the dog Anubis. And Anubis was basically a god from ancient Egypt and from the cult of the dead.
Now, I know some people that pray to Anubis now.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah,
So maybe they'll want to copy the amulet.
Well.
But anyways,
in private, I don't want to say the name of people here, you know. But it's yeah, you know. I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't mind if I said it on air, but you know, I could tell you offline.
All right, that's cool. But it's funny if you look at this house; it almost has pillars in the front that remind you of the Freemason pillars too. So I guess we'll go on to the next slide so you can get a look at what the amulet looks like. So this amulet is actually really tiny. Some people are saying that it looks like a bottle opener or something, but it's not even close to the size that you would need to open a bottle with. And the picture on the left is a statue of Anubis in ancient times. Because the picture of Anubis seemed to change as time went on in Egypt. He started off as just a regular dog figure, but then as time went on, he eventually took on part human form.
Yes.
So
is he evil? Is he an evil god?
Well, technically what his role in ancient Egypt was is he helped the dead. So it's like once you were dead, Anubis was your guide, and he was going to help you. And what he would do is take you to the scales of justice, and there would have your heart weighed. And if your heart weighed more than a feather, you would get fed to an alligator. And if it weighed less, then you're allowed to pass into heaven.
Pass into where?
So he's sort of to heaven or the afterlife or whatever.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't hear it. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I looked at the comparison between the two. If you want to zoom in on the eyes of the amulet were near identical, close to the same. He's got the markings on his back, I guess you can see too on the amulet. And he's basically sitting in the same position. Well, I guess it's common for dogs to sit like that, right? But there was one thing that didn't match, is his mouth. You can see that his mouth is open on the amulet, right? Excuse me. So I decided to start researching it some more. And if you want to go to the next slide, it turns out that this amulet has a spell in the Book of the Dead that explains how it works. And it says that the amulet was placed on the west wall facing east. And in this way that the amulet could protect the dead. And it's weird that a person in my family that had the amulet said that if she actually ended up storing it that way, and she didn't even know about this. She was like, how did she end up doing it by accident, storing it on the west side facing east? So it's almost like the amulet's having an effect on people. Anyone that comes into contact with it, it seems to be able to alter their behavior.
Their behavior.
Yeah, and if you want to go on, yeah, it can tell you what to do without even knowing that it's telling you.
Almost
so
like
if you, yeah, so I wrote a blog on it for adept initiates and tried to get some more help to identify it. And I found out that the Egyptian god or Anubis, he had a spell that was called, or one of the acts he did was called opening of the mouth. And what it was is anyone who died in the afterlife, they couldn't speak. But if Anubis came up to them, he could help by opening their mouth. And then once he did that, they were able to speak in the afterlife. So it's like, holy crap, maybe that's why the amulet has its mouth open, is it's matching the symbol for the spell. So and then if you want to go into the next page here, or slide. Another one of my readers messaged and said that in Scotland that they had the same tradition, except the amulet looks slightly different, and that it's
Scottish Terrier,
same thing. Yeah, it's the Scotty dog. But I was like, so isn't it funny that the ancient Europeans were the Phoenicians carrying Egyptian relics, and here we have a connection of more Europeans doing the same tradition, except it's been a little bit watered down over the centuries, right? It doesn't look like Anubis anymore. It's actually morphed into a different dog. But the general blackness is their shape and everything is the same. And then I was actually on a big radio show. Some friends of mine in Kitchener here invited me to come on to CKWR, and I got to do a live radio show in my hometown. We talked all about this amulet. And the host mentioned, he's like, hey, you keep talking about all these Freemason connections. Don't the Scots have a connection to the Freemasons too?
The Scottish Rite.
And I was like, oh yeah. yeah, the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. So I was like, holy, there's another connection, right? Yeah, so I was like, man, if that's really the case, I got to check the Phoenicians to see if they had an Anubis that looks similar to the amulet. And if you want to hit over on the next slide, it's like, what do you know? It turns out that the Phoenicians did. They were the ones that depicted Anubis with an open mouth. So I was like, holy crap. It's like, it almost seems like the Phoenicians were the ones that left this Anubis amulet in Canada.
But you see the Anubis like on the left-hand side. Yeah, that's the one that the person prays to. Something like that. It's like almost like human.
Yeah, that's one of the older versions of him. So then I checked Sumeria. I'm like, the ancient Sumerians, did they have any dogs that look like Anubis to confirm this theory? If you want to hit the next slide. Sorry, I just gotta stretch a little. It's like this next slide here is a picture of a dog from ancient Sumeria. I was like, holy crap, they almost had the same dog as Anubis, right?
That's right.
It's like his eye or his stance, his ears, almost everything is the same.
Looks very.
So I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. Everyone kept asking me, like, how the heck does some guy from Canada who is like a janitor for most of his life travel all the way up north and find this ancient offering table that solved the mystery of King Solomon's gold mine, right? So I'm like, man, I got to check to make sure that there's no connections between, like, maybe Anubis was the one who helped me find this offering table, right? So I'm like, dang, I got to check with Bulgaria and see if they got any Anubis connections near the offering table that matches the one I found. So I messaged the girl I know in Bulgaria, and she's like, yep, we do, if you want to check the next slide. It turns out just a few miles from that other offering table is a man-made cavern that's the exact same shape as the Anubis amulet. So I was like, holy crap. It's like, it's actually at the point where it started to give me the creeps a little. I'm like, maybe this is actually really how I found the offering tables. It wasn't just luck. It wasn't just chance, but this amulet that I've been playing with when I was a kid had an effect on me. And it's not just me too. It's like even other members of my family just randomly travel to the same area in Bulgaria. It's pretty wild. Oh yeah, then so I went through my slides from my trip when I went up north just to confirm to see if there was anything else that I missed that was connected to Anubis. And if you want to go to the next slide, remember how that ancient offering table in Egypt matched the symbol? Well, if you want to zoom in, you can see that, look who it is on the Egyptian artifact, but it's Anubis, and he's filling an offering table. And if you take a picture of him and put it next to me filling the offering table, my hat is the same shape as his nose, my jacket is the same length and ends at the same spot, and I'm all dressed in black. So it's like, how the heck did that happen by accident, right?
Yeah, exactly. You must have some kind of connection to this. Look at it. Look at it.
Yeah, if you want to zoom in again, you can see that it's like
for viewers to see this.
Yeah, it actually kind of freaked me out. When I first seen it, I was like almost shaking. I'm like, at first this was kind of cool researching it and stuff, but it's almost reached the point where it's gone too far, right? It's like I've gotten in over my head sort of thing now at this point. Yeah, and then here was the kicker too. It's like my friend in Bulgaria saying, now that we got all these connections, we got to find more to prove it, right? This still isn't enough evidence to convince most people, right? So she's like, that other offering table in Bulgaria actually has an ancient Stonehenge really close to it. So she's like, if you want to prove that your offering table is connected to ours here in Bulgaria, then you're going to have to find a Stonehenge that's close to the offering table in Canada. I was like, holy crap, how am I going to find a Stonehenge close to the offering table? Like, I don't know if you guys have heard of any Stonehenge in Canada before, but I haven't, right?
No. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it turned out that if you want to go on to the next slide, sorry, I forgot to show you. This is what the Bulgarian Stonehenge looks like now, but it was actually vandalized really bad.
Yeah, it looks like it was vandalized.
Yeah, so it's like there's not really a lot left of it, but my friend in Bulgaria showed me some pictures of what it used to look like, and it's like, man, it really looked amazing, like Stonehenge. What happened was, as I started using Google, I'm like, man, I'm going to try to find a Stonehenge in Canada, and I found one that was way out by, what's the province on the west coast there called? Calgary, Alberta, something like that. Anyways, there was a Stonehenge there found, and I was like, that's like thousands and thousands of kilometers away from the offering table. So I had to keep looking, right? And then lo and behold, when I was doing the Google search, I don't know if this is a coincidence, but a couple weeks ago, there was a university professor from Canada who happened to discover a Stonehenge in Northern Ontario. So I'm like, holy, is this going to be close to the offering table? And I looked it up, and it turned out to be just down the road from it. So I'm like, just like Bulgaria, Canada has a Stonehenge too. So I don't know if that's a coincidence. But
I think many ancient relics must have, ancient sites have Stonehenge. It must connect to the ancient gods.
yeah, it seems like this pagan tradition was really popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you want to go into the next slide, I'll just show you the map in between the two tables. The map at the top, or you got the map open yet? Or?
Yeah, but it says Canada Stonehenge.
Oh yeah, that's the Canada Stonehenge. So the reason I drew a gray line around it is because this is just a satellite image. The professor hasn't really taken a lot of videos or pictures of the Stonehenge in Canada. So he showed, I actually got in contact with him and I seen the video and everything he got. Well, we got to get there and get some better pictures because that satellite picture just doesn't do it justice, right? But if you want to go to the next slide after that, that should be the one with the map. Yeah, that's the one. So if you look at the distance between the two offering tables and the Stonehenges, they're pretty close to the same, 40 kilometers, 14 kilometers. I guess it's not really that close, but if you look at the water that's next to this trail in between, notice how the river is even shaped the same way in some cases, where it's like a cone shape and it's got an island in the center. And it's basically an east-west path that you have to take to get from one to the other. So it's like, there's a little bit of coincidences there. But I got to keep checking for more. So if you want to go to the next slide. It turns out that this, well, that's the one with the map. Eh? Okay, let me check. Yeah. So basically what I did is I looked at the walk in between the offering table and the mountain to see what it looked like, and it happened to match a picture of Freemason artwork exactly. Well, not exactly, but you can see if you zoom in that the road is generally going in the same path.
Yeah.
It goes up, it turns right, and then it hangs a left and goes into a cave. That's basically the same. We got a lodge here, and that's in the same spots. And if you look at the Freemason artwork, it's got a biblical ship in the background. And just behind the offering table was the Ottawa River that was taking the biblical ships or Phoenician ships back to the Holy Land. So I'm like, is this really a coincidence, or did the Freemasons know all along?
And there's the eyes of
really
Horus. On top is the eyes of Horus. It seems like.
Yeah, that's the all-seeing eye. It's the symbol for connecting to the universal internet.
Yeah.
Or getting to heaven or the Akashic records. Basically, you can do a lot of things with the ancient internet. And then, yeah, I was looking too. It's like if you zoom in at the top, you see the Freemason guys are sitting around on the top of the mountain, and there's a shooting star that goes down. Well, that shooting star happens to go on the Canadian one right to the offering table. So I was like, is that a coincidence too? That the ancient internet was a stream of light going to Sirius, and the Freemason artwork shows a stream of light going right to where the offering table is? It's like, oh, and then here's the other thing too. Look at the name of what the Freemason art is called. It says it right at the bottom. It says, where is it? From darkness to light. And then this walk here is the walk you have to do to transform into the light body. So I was like, from darkness to light, the light body is here. It's like, how many more coincidences can we get, right?
It's all planned.
Yeah, it's like one coincidence after another. All right, if you want to go on to the next slide, I got a little bit, see which one we got there. Okay, there it is. I just had one slide reversed in my order. But it doesn't matter. Here, I'll just read this one now. It turns out that this ancient Mount Kemenus is also called a cauldron mountain. And a cauldron is the witch's cauldron thing, right? I was talking about that earlier, how this ancient internet offering pools are basically the origin of what witches' cauldrons came from. And the First Nations people in the area around this mountain have been calling it a holy mountain long before Europeans arrived. And they called it a, what is it, Chamanus Mountain? And it could be they think that that actually is another word for shaman or a place of healers. So it's like there's the shaman connection too. Right? All right, if you guys want to go on to the next slide, see what one we got here. Okay, so that's that one. All right, so it's another map picture. And so I looked at the area in Canada closer. And I'm like, is there any pictures of shaman that I could find nearby here? And then I looked at the lake, and I'm like, hey, that kind of looks like a guy holding up a cauldron, right?
It does.
So if you want to go on to the, yeah, if you want to go to the next slide. And if you can zoom in, maybe, Mario, let's see if we got the next slide, if it's the right one. Just before we start. Yeah, it is. Yeah, if you want to zoom to the top left, before I even found out about the shaman thing, I started drawing an outline to see what it looked like. And when I got to the guy's head, his head looks kind of weird, right? Like he's got like a helmet on of some type or a mohawk or something. And it's like his nose is blurry, like there's something going on there. So I was like, I don't know if this is really a match. It's like maybe I'm just seeing things here, right? But then it turns out one of my Freemason friends, actually the same one that helped me with the Egyptian offering table to identify, was posting pictures of shamans from South America. And I looked at it and put it next to it. I'm like, holy crap, man. It's like his head matches the exact shape. And if you can zoom in on the South American guy, sorry, it's just so incredible. It's hard to even talk about. It's like you could see that the South American guy has a nose piece going to his nose, and that he's wearing a helmet that matches the same shape outline as the guy in the lake. So it's like, how the heck is this even possible, right? It's like, how would a shaman or these ancient people shape the lake to be what they wanted, right? That's not possible. Like, we don't have the technology to make lakes, right? Or at least we didn't back then. Funny, I guess.
Yeah.
If you want to go to the next slide, it's like the same question came up with the mushrooms in the offering table, right? I was saying, like, it almost seems like this mystery is designed on a global scale where the planet is actually part of the mystery itself. So I put all these offering tables in Stonehenge onto a huge globe map to see what would happen. And look what happens is it matches the ancient Sumerian versions. It's like we got the Stonehenge, the offering table are mirrored on either side of the globe. Iceland and Greenland almost match the same spot as the pillars. So I was like, holy man, if this is really this big of a scale of mystery, and I'm hearing about offering tables, it's like, what's the oldest offering table story you've ever heard of? Well, I'll give you a clue. Yeah, a little bit of a clue, I guess, is Cain versus Abel. Yeah, it says it right there. Sorry, I forgot I put that on there.
Yeah. Wasn't that the first one, the first sacrifice that it was supposed to do to God, I believe?
Yeah, that's what the Bible story talked about. They were saying how Cain and Abel fought each other, or actually one murdered the other. And it was all over a sacrifice that they did.
Yes.
Abel did a sacrifice that worked, and Cain did a sacrifice that didn't. So Cain was jealous and killed Abel for it. And then after, as a punishment, God banished him to the land of Nod. And it was a huge mystery for centuries is where is this land of Nod, right? The only clue really we had is that it was the farthest place away possible from the Holy Land. So I was thinking, if King Solomon's mine is that far away, we should really check, right?
Right.
Yeah, so then I was like, is there any evidence that Cain was here in North America? And then I looked it up, and you got the Aztec. If you want to, the next slide, if you want to go on to it before I get too far ahead.
There it is.
Yeah, so if you want to zoom into the top left corner where it has the Aztec legend. And it turns out that the Aztecs, people from South America, had a legend where they came from way up north. And people are always trying to figure out, like, where up north or where did they come from and stuff. And then I was like, man, that Aztec legend has the same image that the light beings gave me on the coin, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
wow.
So I was like, wait a minute here. Here's the clue. It's like, the Bible also said that when Cain got to the land of Nod, the first thing he did is he built a city and he named it after his son, and he called the city Enoch. So I was like, what did the Aztecs call their city when they used the sacred tree to go and find a new spot? And they named it Enoch Titlan. So I was like, is that a coincidence that the Aztecs named their city after Enoch also? It's like, how is that a possible coincidence, right?
Exactly.
So if you want to go on to the next slide, I started looking it up to see, it's like, is it even possible that the Aztecs could be people from the Holy Land area? And then it said that their mystic homeland was called Aztlan, or Aztlan, and it was the place of whiteness, and it had a place of 7 caves. It's like, I don't know if you guys have seen those stories circulating on the internet, but it turns out that there's huge mega caverns and caves over in the Holy Land, right? So I was like, and we found out that the ancient Europeans were there. So it's like, if you were going to refer to an ancient European homeland, would be correct to call it the place of whiteness? It almost matches identically, right?
Yes.
So if you want to go on to the next slide.
Interesting.
It's like, I'm like, I got to find out here. It's like, is there any evidence that the ancient Europeans were in South America that long ago? And what do you know? That there's all these red-haired mummies that keep popping up in South America. They're like, where are they coming from? It's a mystery, right? So it's like, oh, it's like, if here's the evidence that supports that theory, right? And if you want to check out the god of the Aztecs, I'm like, if this really is a connection, the god of the Aztecs is going to have to match those sacred internet symbols, right?
Right.
So if you want to go to the next slide. What do you know? That the god of the Aztecs is holding those same symbols. So I was like, holy crap, how come I didn't notice this before, right? And it's weird too that they have another god in South America called Viracocha, and it's always been said too that he was a white god. So I was like, there's a lot of white history in South America that appears to have been covered up. So I checked the DNA history of what happened in South America, and even the DNA studies say that a massive flood or some sort of cataclysm wiped everyone out before the Spanish arrived. So there was a phase where everyone got wiped out, it got repopulated, and then it got wiped out again by the Spanish. And I was like, is this even possible? But the South American people even said that, is a lot of them didn't claim to have built the pyramids. They said when they got there that they just rehabitated places that were already built. So I was like, okay, so I better check this lineage of Cain to see what happened to it, to see if there's any evidence of him actually being in South America. And if you check the next slide, I got a little descendant map here. It turns out Cain's ancestors, like Enoch, that were in South America, eventually they got wiped out by a flood. So I was like, everyone in South America got wiped out by the flood, so there would be no white people left there, obviously, right? And then one of his ancestors turned out to be Tubal Cain. And in the Bible, it says that God eventually let up his punishment against Cain and let him return back to the Holy Land. So I don't know, you guys remember the flood movie or Noah movie that came out a few years ago?
Yeah, I didn't go see it. Did you see it?
Oh, you didn't see it?
No.
Well, anyways, yeah, I seen that movie, and they even talked in that movie how Tubal Cain snuck onto the ark, and that's how he survived the flood. And it turns out Tubal Cain is also the secret password to Freemasons. That's one of the words you have to say to get into the lodge. So I was like, here the Freemasons have known all along the history of Tubal Cain, and that he was in South America, and that he came back to the Holy Land. So it's pretty wild that we can actually see what happened to Cain's ancestors in South America. And it's funny too, guess what the Bible says about Cain's ancestors? That they were evil pagans, that they worshiped fire. So it's like, if they were the fire worshipping pagans, well, there's another match to the ancient Sumerians. Right?
Great find.
Yeah, I guess we're getting real close on time here, so I'll just try to finish off here.
Great
it's like
find.
yeah, thanks. It's if you want to go on to the next slide. I'm like, man, like the Aztecs were a brutal culture and they did a lot of human sacrifices. So I'm like, if Cain was really involved with that offering table that I found, we're gonna have to find some evidence for horrible sacrifices going on there. And then I checked the history of the offering table, and what do you know? There was a guy that was found there murdered. His head was cut off, both of his hands, his right foot, and some sort of like a cult ritual. So it's like right at the offering table too. So I'm like, man, like here all along, I was looking for evidence that there was some sort of cult sacrifices going on here to link it to Cain, and it said it right in the freaking newspaper. Couldn't believe it. Yeah, and it's, I guess, go on to the next slide after this one. It's like, you know how I found that shaman in the lake? And I was like, how is that even possible? It's like you look at the moon, and the moon's history has the exact same thing. It says in ancient Asia, there was a cult sacrifice that was done to save someone, and the reward is that the rabbit was placed on the moon next to an offering table. And then I checked the Aztec history, and they had the same legend, that there was a rabbit on the moon with an offering table. So I'm like, this is how the shaman got put on the lake. It's the same way that the moon got the rabbit on it. So it almost seems like the mystery is designed into our planet. Right?
Leland,
like
what Bible are you reading?
Which Bible? Well, actually, I read the Bible Hub mostly. The Bible Hub gives you like a list of like 10 or 15 different versions of the Bible. You can compare all the different texts. It's got the King James version, the new versions, and all that.
Okay.
And then I also...
Sorry? You was asking.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and I also like to read the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls seems like a jackpot for a lot of this stuff. And a lot of people are saying, like, I guess, like, I've already done this presentation, and a lot of people agreed, and some people didn't. So I was like, they're saying that everything I'm talking about here just sounds like some sort of horrible deception, right? Saying that the pagans had all this knowledge and stuff. And if you want to go on to the next slide, I checked Revelations to see what it says about the Magog and all these pagans. And it says almost the exact same thing that my critics are saying. It says that when 1,000 years are complete, released from his prison, he will go out to deceive the nations of the four corners of the earth about Gog and Magog, to assemble them for a battle. And their number is like the sand of the seashore. And then it even says, too, that Satan is traditionally identified as the serpent who tempted Adam and Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. And I went over on the last show how that was actually the symbol for the sacred tree of the pagans. So it's like, man, it's like, it almost seems like the Bible is taunting me, saying that, hey, everything you're telling is just a deception, right? It's like, I feel bad about telling it, but it's like, I got no choice. If it is a deception or not, it's basically, it seems like my life calling, right? I can't not tell people about it. So I'm just saying, like, being upfront, it's like, maybe it will turn out to all be a deception if the Bible revelation is true.
Well, I'm sure the Bible would be. It has to be.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to go back to the first slide too, it has a picture of my grandma. It's like, that's what I was thinking, that my grandma had this look on her face. It's like she couldn't tell me. Like, she was a dream psychic and she was able to predict the future.
Hold on the line.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there she is. So it's like you look at her face and you can almost see that she knew that I was going to discover all this stuff. It's like all these years later, and she couldn't tell me, right? So that's why she had that weird look on her face. It's like she knew what my destiny was going to be for all this stuff. Yeah, sorry, I just get choked up a little bit when I talk about my grandma. Yeah.
Okay, it's understandable.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this is where actually the Anubis amulet came into. I guess that's the end of the slide. So if you got any questions you guys want to ask too.
Well, wasn't there a video?
Oh yeah, there was one last video, which was that one. Yeah, you can play it now. I forget which one it was.
Do you have the video, Mario?
Definitely. Anubis Cleop.
Oh yeah, I was just about to talk about the Anubis amulet too. This is actually my cousin who's drawing Anubis, and it's just a short clip. And she just started learning how to draw, and she was able to draw pictures like a laser printer. So I was almost wondering if Anubis somehow affected her as well, right?
That looks like some kind of Anubis creature.
Yeah, she drew Anubis for me for one of my blogs. It was the one about the Anubis.
It has horns. It has horns.
Yeah. So if you guys want to see the full version of that video, you can just go into my YouTube channel. But I just put a short clip because I knew we'd be short on time here.
Okay, but it's very fascinating. Look at it. Look at it, Mario.
I know.
Yeah. So it's weird. Like, how does someone get that good of art skills just like off the bat, right? Like, usually you have to spend years and years and years of practicing before you're that good. Right? Now, and the other thing too is my family was telling me what some of the experiences around the Anubis amulet have been like. And if you take it and you put it in a spot that's not storing it correctly, paranormal stuff starts happening. You can start hearing voices at night, and you always get the feeling like someone's watching you. So I was like, "Oh, that doesn't sound good."
No, the person that's worshiping this Anubis is describing the same things, and they get depression, and they got all kinds of oppression on top of it.
Yeah, so what happened was I actually got the Anubis amulet loaned to me for a while so that I could make a copy of it. What I'm going to do is start spreading copies of the Anubis amulet to as many people as I can, maybe as many grains of sand as there are on the beach, right? Like the prophecy in the Bible says. But no, and the other thing too is the Anubis amulet, when I had it in the house for my first night sleeping, guess what happened? Is I had a dream and I was talking to all the people that I died from when I was a kid, or basically living the hard life, right?
Right.
And even my best friend, I had like a good half-hour conversation with my best friend that I haven't seen in 10 years, right? So it's pretty incredible stuff. It's like I was almost convinced that the amulet stories' paranormal abilities weren't true, but after experiencing them firsthand, it like really freaked me out too. Because like you try to sleep in the same house as this amulet and you can feel someone watching you. It's like, I don't know if it's easy for people to sleep when they got that kind of feeling, but it's a little bit intense.
I get the feeling people should not be worshiping this Anubis, or even associating themselves with it. I don't know. It's kind of scary. I mean, it's not something you want to meet in the middle of the night or in a dark alley. Look at it. It looks demonic.
No, and that's the thing too. Some demon stuff actually was associated with the Anubis amulet as well. Like there was a kid or someone that was like a family friend who was claiming they went through a lot of abuse and that they used summoning to get a demon to help them get through the bad situations. But then afterwards, the demon never left and it's like stayed possessing him. And he was telling the people in my family about this demonic stuff and they didn't believe him. So later that night when my family was sleeping, they had a dream and the demon was attacking them in the dream and everyone in the family was in the dream.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so then the person woke up from the dream and was terrified and went to tell like her husband about the dream. And he's like, I had the same dream.
Wow.
And they're like, what the heck, right? So they went and talked to my cousin who was sleeping in the same house. And she's like, did you guys have the demon dream? And then they're like, what? How did she have the demon dream too? So then the next day, that kid calls and he's like, so I asked the demon to visit you last night to prove that it was real. How did it go? And they were like freaked out. But he said too that the demon actually was going to attack them in the dream, but the Anubis amulet stopped him. So I was like, he was protected against from the Anubis amulet. So I was like, that's kind of where I figured out that I'm not really going to be involved in this Antichrist stuff if demons are against me, right? It's like if I was the Antichrist, I'm pretty sure demons would be on my side, right?
No, Leland, I don't think you're the Antichrist.
No, sure. After finding this stuff out, I really don't think that anymore.
No, I hope not.
It's like I even got some, I got some more people online that have even started messaging me and telling me they're convinced that I am, but like maybe I shouldn't have mentioned that before.
Okay, but the thing is, yeah, I don't want you. We don't want you to be the Antichrist, knowing that you came on our show, and because the Antichrist is going to kill billions of people. So I feel kind of iffy about you, about actually having the Antichrist on my show, on our show.
As long as something like Star Wars doesn't happen, where the elite kill my family and turn me into Darth Vader, I shouldn't be having that problem anytime soon.
Yeah, then you come after us. It's like Vader and marry myself. I don't know. We don't have the lightsabers.
Yeah.
No. So you guys could probably see why the radio show in my town has started inviting me to come on the show over and over again. Some of the information I've got now is like, it's really incredible.
I know. Well, it is. It is fascinating. All of this information. Just,
yeah.
Wow.
And I got my website up and going now, so if anyone wants to log in and check it out. And actually, this summer, I'm getting another booth at Fan Expo, and I'm going to be sharing all the Anubis amulet stuff. So if you happen to be in the Toronto area and you want to get a copy of the Anubis amulet, just come to Fan Expo in Toronto, and you can meet me, my cousin.
The Canadian Anubis. Okay, yeah. So what's your website?
It's judsonweebly.com. I also got a Facebook page too, if everyone wants to follow me on that. I've only got a couple hundred followers, but it's like I can imagine if this Cain and Abel story turns out to be true, that might go up a little.
You'll be famous.
Yeah. No, that's what I kind of worry about too. It's like as good as being famous about this would be, in a way it would be horrible. It's like all that stuff about the Aryan history and stuff. It's a really touchy subject, right?
It is, I know. For real, yeah.
So I'd just like to make it clear too, like right off the bat, that even if ancient Europeans were in South America, I don't think it justifies any of the crimes that were done to those people, the First Nations. It's like, I still think it's their land and stuff. I'm not going to try to make any claim to that.
Okay, wow. Yeah, we don't want that to happen.
Yeah, and it's funny too. It's like you guys were asking what happened when I connected to the universal internet. I've got enough material to do a whole nother show on just that. So if you want to have me back on to talk about that, there's a whole nother phase of what comes next.
Okay, yeah, of course, for sure.
Yeah, in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, in the meantime, I'm just going to keep researching like heck. It's like, I talked about the veil being lifted, and it's like, I don't know, a year or two ago, I used to have a discovery maybe once a month, every 3 months. It seems like lately, my discoveries are coming in about every 2 weeks. So it seems like that acceleration effect is happening, right? That they talk about in the end times.
Yeah.
It almost makes it difficult to research because I'm learning so much so quickly now. It's like the veil is gone.
I know how you feel because I'm researching every day in, day out, that I research so much I start to forget everything else in my life, and I start having memory blanks because all this information comes in, but I don't know if my brain is big enough to process it and remember it.
Yeah. Then the whole God and atheist thing too, it's like, it's looking like these ancient gods that exist on the other side of the internet, they live in a dimension that looks like maybe they evolved naturally, and then they created us here. So it's like, it's almost like atheism and intelligent design could be both true with this theory.
Well, I guess we'll have to do more research into all of this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the other big discovery I just found today, I guess we got a little bit of time, is you know how the offering table you can put water in to see stars? Well, there's also another fluid that you can put in. I guess those guys were using blood, but the most ideal fluid that you can put into this offering table is mercury. And then in ancient times, all the tombs, they kept finding mercury in them. And they're like, why the heck is all this mercury here? So I'm like, is there any evidence to say that mercury could really reflect starlight? And then I looked it up, and the most advanced telescope in the world today actually uses a mirror that's made out of liquid mercury, and it can only look straight up. But they said it works so good that they still use mercury. So I was like, holy crap, there's the connection too. Modern technology is still using the same mercury for the ancient internet. And then too, what is that Lucifer telescope, right?
Yeah.
Maybe maybe they're trying to tap in. The Vatican's found a different way to get to this Sirius internet. Yeah, we always hear about Sirius too, right?
We do, Sirius radio, yeah.
Oh, and that was the other thing too. It's like, you know how those mushrooms bloom in the dog days of summer?
Yeah.
Anubis is a dog. So it's like, there's another connection too, right?
Yeah, that's right, yeah. But it's not a dog I want to own. What about you, Mario?
No, definitely not.
No, it's weird too, because my family said that they could leave me the Anubis amulet in their will. Now it's like almost at the point where I don't even really know if I'd want to keep that thing around because it scares the crap out of me.
No, you shouldn't. As advice, I wouldn't. Would you, Mario?
No.
Well, all right. I guess we'll end the show right now.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
If you guys got any more questions in the future, just let me know. If you want me back on the show, I can tell you how it went for the next stage of this.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm sure I'll have a bunch of more discoveries.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thanks, Leland. I mean, this information is just like so much information. I'm gonna have to rewatch the slides in the show when I get a chance and make it all sink in. And of course, I'm gonna ask you questions later on when I get the chance, you know. But it's amazing. I mean.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
No problem.
Yeah,
no, anytime. Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll end the show, Mario.
Yeah, we're definitely ending the show. Thank you, Leland, for coming on.
Yeah, and thanks a million, guys. Take care.
And we'll be back next week on the MNR TV live show with another new guest. And that's
all right.
Exactly. So it's going to be very interesting next week. A bit of history next week.
All right.
Coming on the MNR TV live show.
Yes, sir.
All right. So thank you, Leland, for coming on the show. Our reviewers for watching the show. Share the show. Share Leland's information. We've got to get this out. And we'll be back next week, God willingly. So thank you very much, and see you next week. Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye. Later. Bye.